Why are you still sitting? Put one hand on the arm of your chair, or both. Now stand up, slowly, honestly, without rocking forward, without bouncing, without using your arms for help. If your hands pressed into the armrest, if your knees wobbled for half a second before they locked, if your nose had to lead the way over your toes just to get you upright, keep watching. Because what just happened inside your body in those 3 seconds is the single most honest number there is. Not cholesterol, not your bone density scan, not your daily step count, not your VO2 max. The number is whether you can rise from a chair cleanly, without compensation, today, right now, in any living room on earth. And the exercise that protects that number is the same movement your body has been quietly performing 5, 10, 20 times a day since you were 4 years old. Sit down, stand up. That is it. Boring, ordinary. And behind the scenes, the most extraordinary physical event your body can perform without any equipment at all. To understand why it matters more than any treadmill or dumbbell you have ever bought, we are going to do what Richard Feynman would have done the first time someone handed him a senior fitness claim at Caltech. We are going to ignore the headline. We are going to ignore the influencer. And we are going to walk the movement itself, the muscle, the joint, the brain, layer by layer, until every sentence passes a small, simple test. Could you say it to a curious 12-year-old and have them nod? Anything that fails that test, by the end of this video, we throw away. And the honest line first, because honesty about scope is the most important Feynman habit there is. This is not medical advice. If you have a recent orthopedic surgery, an active joint replacement still in early recovery, a recent fall, or any cardiac event in the last 6 months, talk to your doctor before adding any new movement. Most people past 60 can do this exercise. The protocol depends on you starting where you actually are, not pretending you are younger than you are. The exercise has a clinical name. Researchers call it the sit-to-stand, sometimes the chair stand, sometimes in clinical shorthand just STS. Geriatricians rank it among the most informative tests a clinician can give to an older adult, because how easily you rise from a chair is, in a single movement, a quick read on your muscle strength, your balance, your joint health, your postural control, your cognition, and even your future fall risk. That single sentence is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Unpack it the way Feynman would, layer by layer, until nothing is hidden. Take the phrase muscle strength. Sit on a chair. Stand up. If you have ever watched a toddler do this, you know it is not effortless. It is a controlled fall and a controlled recovery. As you age, the muscle fibers you spent your 20s and 30s taking for granted, particularly the fast-twitch type 2 fibers in your quadriceps, your glutes and your calves, slowly atrophy. The decline begins around age 30, accelerates after 60, and is faster in people who are inactive. By 70, the average sedentary adult has lost roughly 40% of the muscle mass they had at 25. That number is not a scare quote. It is what deconditioning looks like at the cellular level. Now, when those 4 muscle groups, quads, glutes, calves, and the entire posterior chain, work together to lift your body weight from seated to standing, they have to generate enough force to overcome roughly 60% of your body weight, concentrated entirely through your knees. That is a huge mechanical demand. If your muscles can produce that force easily, 90 times out of 100 you will rise smoothly, without using your hands, without rocking, without falling forward. If your muscles cannot, you will compensate. You will push with your arms. You will lean your nose over your toes and momentum bounce up. You will grip the chair edge, and every one of those compensations is a small, accumulating warning sign that your functional reserve is shrinking. The brilliant part of the sit-to-stand as an exercise is that it forces every one of those muscles to produce that exact force, in that exact sequence, again and again. It is not isolation, it is integrated. It is the closest thing to a real-life muscle test you can do without a gym. Now the second phrase, balance. Balance is not what most people think it is. It is not steadiness. Balance is the nervous system's continuous, real-time calculation of where your center of mass is relative to your base of support, and the constant firing of small adjustments in the muscles of your ankles, your hips, your core, even the small muscles along your spine, just to keep you from tipping over. Every second you are upright, your brain is running that calculation. When you sit down and then stand up, the calculation has to happen twice in quick succession. with a sudden reverse of direction in the middle, which is the kind of demand uniquely hard for the aging balance system. The research on this is unusually consistent. Slower sit-to-stand times have been correlated across multiple large cohort studies with higher fall risk over the following 1 to 3 years. It is not because the chair test causes falls. It is because the test exposes in seconds the same coordination deficits that show up across daily life. Practicing the movement is not just training muscle. It is training the timing and cooperation between muscle and brain. The integration that prevents a future fall. That brings us to the third phrase, joint health. The sit-to-stand, in its simplest form, is a controlled full-range squat. Your knees flex through close to 90 degrees. Your hips flex through a comparable range. Your ankles dorsiflex. Your spine holds a near vertical line. Done gently, repeatedly, and consistently, this movement sends nutrient-rich synovial fluid through the cartilage of your knees and hips. Cartilage has no blood supply. It depends almost entirely on mechanical loading to receive its nutrients. A joint that moves through its full range every day is a joint that stays lubricated. A joint that does not slowly dehydrates and stiffens. That is why orthopedists, almost without exception, prescribe gentle, full-range movement as the first line of defense against the kind of stiffness that pushes people into the operating room. The sit-to-stand is the cheapest, safest full-range movement you can perform for the two joints most likely to limit you as you age, your knees and your hips. The fourth phrase, postural control. Posture is the body's continuous adjustment against gravity. Gravity never switches off. Even when you are sitting still, a network of small muscles along your spine, in your deep abdominal wall, and across your shoulder girdle are firing to keep you upright, hour after hour. Those muscles, particularly the deep spinal stabilizers and the pelvic floor, lose coordination with age. They do not necessarily lose mass the way the quads do. They lose coordination. They begin firing at the wrong moment relative to the larger muscle groups. The sit-to-stand, because it has to move the entire body mass from one stable platform to another, recruits those deep stabilizers alongside the big muscles and forces them to do their job in the right order. Practiced daily, it retrains that recruitment order in a way that translates almost immediately into standing posture, walking posture, and the small anticipatory adjustments that prevent noise, surprise, and uneven pavement from knocking you off balance. The fifth phrase, cognition. This is the part that Feynman himself would have lingered on for a long time, because it is the most surprising. The sit-to-stand is not a thoughtless movement. It is one of the most cognitively demanding physical movements the human body can produce. Standing up from a seated position requires, simultaneously, an internal decision to start, a sensory prediction of how much force you will need, a continuous monitoring of the body's response to that force, and a final check on stability at the top. Multiple research groups, including teams that have studied the relationship between mobility and dementia, have found that slower sit-to-stand times correlate statistically with higher incidence of cognitive decline over the following decade. Correlation, not causation. But the correlation is strong enough that geriatricians now consider the sit-to-stand a useful early warning marker for brain aging, alongside more formal cognitive screens. The practical upside, for our purposes as exercisers, is that practicing the movement is also practicing the cognitive components of the movement. Every repetition rehearses the brain-to-muscle loop. That is good for everyone. It is especially good for people who want to keep a sharp mind while keeping a strong body. And there is one more layer under the muscle layer that almost no fitness content ever mentions. Every time your muscles bear mechanical load, the cells inside them experience a small amount of microscopic damage. That sounds bad, but it is actually the signal your body uses to rebuild the muscle stronger. The way you keep that signal loud as you age is to apply mechanical load intentionally and to apply it frequently. The sit-to-stand applied daily, with attention, is exactly the kind of load that wakes up the very muscles most at risk of disappearing quietly over the next decade of your life. There is a related mechanism that matters specifically for women past menopause. Bone, like muscle, is living tissue that responds to mechanical load. Wolff's law, taught in physiology textbooks for over a century, states that bone remodels itself along the lines of stress placed on it. Loading through the heel, through the femur, through the pelvis, during a controlled sit-to-stand, sends a piezoelectric signal through the bone matrix that tells the osteoblast to deposit new mineral at exactly the points under load. Walking does some of it. Lifting external weight does more. But for the population past 60, the cheapest answer to the question of how to send that signal every single day is the sit-to-stand, executed with control, executed with attention to the weight in your heels. Now the second Feynman pivot. Most popular senior exercise videos on the internet make a claim something like this: one exercise reverses aging. That claim is, in the strict scientific sense, false. Aging is multi-system, multi-mechanism, and not something any single movement reverses. But the Feynman move is not to throw the claim away. It is to translate it precisely, so the truth remains. What the sit-to-stand really does, in plain language, is preserve the reserve capacities that aging tries to take from you. Reserve capacity means the gap between your minimum functional ability and the physical demands of an unexpected event. If your minimum is high, you can stand up from a chair without hands, walk up a flight of stairs without resting, recover from a stumble on uneven ground, then you have a buffer. If your minimum is low, then even a small event can push you below the line where independent living becomes unsafe. The single best predictor of that reserve, multiple studies suggest, is not strength alone, is not balance alone, is not cognition alone. It is their integration. The sit-to-stand is the cheapest single test and trainer of that integration. It does not reverse aging. It widens the buffer, now the protocol. This is the practical part, and I am going to keep it as plain as Feynman kept his examples. If you are new to strength training, if you have not exercised regularly in years, or if you have any of the medical conditions I mentioned at the top, begin with this. Pick a chair that is stable, ideally with armrests and a firm seat, and place it against a wall so it cannot slide. Stand with the chair directly behind you. Sit down controlled. Take a beat. Exhale. Then stand back up. That is 1 repetition. If you need to use the armrests to push off, use them. If you need to lean your chest forward over your toes to help, lean. The first goal is not to do it perfectly. The first goal is to do it safely, every day, for 1 week. Do 3 sets of 5 repetitions, with a 60-second rest between sets, once a day for 7 days. By the end of that week, you will have performed 105 sit-to-stands. You will know which muscles are sore, because they are the muscles that have been quietly shrinking for years. That soreness is information. It is not a problem. Week 2. If week 1 felt manageable, add 1 repetition per set, 3 sets of 6. By the end of week 2, you have done another 126. Continue adding 1 repetition per set each week until you reach 3 sets of 12. At that point, if you can perform 36 sit-to-stands in a single session without using your hands, without rocking forward, and with consistent smooth control, you are ahead of roughly 70% of sedentary adults your age in functional lower body strength. That number is not from a single study. It is consistent across multiple large cohort datasets in the United States, Europe, and East Asia. Roughly 7 in 10 sedentary adults over 60 cannot do 36 controlled sit-to-stands without compensation. You will. The next stage is to remove the push from your arms, then to slow the descent, taking 3 full seconds to lower yourself into the chair and 3 full seconds to come back up. The longer, slower version, called the tempo sit-to-stand, dramatically increases the time your muscles spend under tension, which is the variable most strongly linked to strength gain in adults of every age. Variations. The easier one is the elevated surface variation. Use a chair with a higher seat, or place a firm cushion on the chair, so the distance between your seat and the floor is reduced. The mechanics are the same. The required force is lower. This is the right variation for the first few days if you are very deconditioned. The harder one, after you have mastered 36 clean repetitions, is the single leg variation. Rise from the chair with 1 foot slightly lifted. This doubles the force demand on the supporting leg, and it is genuinely hard, which is why I am putting it last in the list, not first. Most people should not attempt the single leg version until they can do 50 or more clean repetitions of the standard version. The point of variations is not to impress. The point is to keep the exercise challenging and safe at whatever level your body currently operates at. The Feynman principle in practice is the same as it is in science. You do not test a hypothesis you cannot afford to test. You scale the experiment to the lab you have. Now I want to address the big mistake that I see constantly in senior fitness content. And it is the mistake that Feynman, who was famously intolerant of imprecision, would have flagged immediately. Most senior exercise videos treat the sit-to-stand as a leg exercise. It is not. It is a whole-body exercise, and the most important part of the body it recruits is, surprisingly, the brain. That is why the cognitive decline correlation exists. That is why it sits at the heart of geriatric functional assessment. Practicing the sit-to-stand without paying attention to the quality of the movement is doing half the exercise. Practicing it while deliberately noticing what each muscle is doing, while breathing deliberately, while keeping the chest over the hips, while keeping the spine neutral, is doing the whole exercise. The first version is a stretch. The second version is training. Same movement, different quality, same Feynman idea, applied to your own body. The most reliable way to learn is to keep noticing what feels confusing. So here is the full Feynman summary, in 2 sentences. Every time you sit down and stand up from a chair with attention, you are loading a system you have been neglecting for years. Every day you do that, your muscles, your joints, your balance, your posture, and your brain get a small, safe, measurable dose of the kind of integrated training that is most often missing from older adult life. That is the exercise. That is the experiment. That is the entire protocol. There is no supplement. There is no app. There is no machine that costs thousands of dollars. There is only a chair and the willingness to do the same ordinary movement you have done 1,000 times, with 1,000 times more attention. Now let me close with the small act of practice that the Feynman lessons in this series always earn best when they land inside the body. Tonight, after dinner, place a chair against a wall, sit down, stand up. Notice the moment when your knees are at 90 degrees. Notice the weight in your heels. Notice the breath. Notice where you are using your hands. Do 3 sets of 5, slow and deliberate. Tomorrow the same. Next week, add 1 repetition per set. By the end of a month, ask yourself honestly whether rising from a chair feels easier than it did a month ago. If it does, you did not reverse aging. You widened the buffer. You added reserve. You gave your muscles their load, your joints their motion, your balance its rehearsal, your brain its small puzzle, and you did it without a subscription, without a gadget, without leaving the kitchen. This is what Feynman meant when he said that nature does not argue, it demonstrates. The demonstration in this case is the act you just performed. The exercise is true because the chair and your own body just showed you so.